Okay. Thank you, Julia, and the people from GameJamPlus for creating this opportunity and to talk about this concept of key features that I think is very important for the next stage, that the work we are doing during the incubation and, of course, the work we are doing with our games. So before we begin, let me quickly introduce myself. I am a game developer from Costa Rica. I've been in the industry for something like 10 years, published a couple of games on Steam, and I've been studying game design as a professional and a researcher. So my area of expertise, if you might, is mostly game design. But as an entrepreneur, I have to. I've been in your shoes. I have to understand how to market a game, or what do I need to know to prepare my game for a marketing strategy. Understanding what type of game I have and what type of strategy can work to properly get a partner, for instance, a publisher if I want, or to engage with my audience. This is a complex task. It takes a lot of time, and there is no easy recipe for this. So here, what we are going to work is a few tips and tools to help you guys do the same, to help you guys understand the strengths of your game in order to get a better marketing strategy for your title. So I'm assuming that everyone who is watching this lecture, either live or in afterwards, that all of you are people who are making your game and you want to sell that game. So I'm assuming you want to make a game for a commercial industry. From that assumption, then we are going to talk about a few strategies and tools, so you are better prepared for the commercial side of things, the marketing of your game. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the challenges of today's industry. As indie developers, we have a very difficult challenge to tackle because we are expected to be good at too many things at the same time. We are expected to be good game designers, good producers, good at marketing, good influencers, etc., etc. And that is really tough for the indie game developer, because you have to keep changing your hat, to keep getting updated on all these different camps. And it means that we have to know a little bit about everything, and it's obviously not easy to handle that many tasks at the same time. This is true for any entrepreneur in any field. Ours is not different than any other one in that regard. The really tough reality right now is that a good game won't sell on its own. If I have a very good game, that is not a guarantee that that game is going to do well in the market. And the even tougher reality is that today's industry is going through a very, very, very bad crisis, maybe the worst crisis we've seen since the crash of '83, which, if you don't know, is the crash of '83 was a moment that fundamentally changed the way that the game industry worked. From a marketing perspective, games before the crash of '83 were considered cheap and cheaply made and fast products. And the crash happened because the audience was changing their consuming habits, and everything that the industry thought they knew about how to create and market a game proved wrong from from one moment to the next. The pivotal moment of the crash of 83 is the publishing of the game of E.T., the extraterrestrial, which was developed in 5 weeks and was allotted to be published at the same time as a movie. And it's considered one of the worst games of all time. Not the fault of their developers. They were doing the best they could with the few resources they had in hand. So we are going through a similar process now. The post-COVID phenomenon that we are living means that the industry has too much emphasis on live service games, and there is less investment for new games and less publishers available. Right now, it's really tough. The word on the street is that any publisher will hear 100 games and publish only one from those. So you as an indie game developer, if you want to get a publishing deal, then you will have to talk with a lot of publishers. We've seen some testimonials of people that have had like 70 to 80 meetings or 70 to 80 pitches to different publishers and only got one to sign with them. It's very different at how the landscape was 5 years ago, where I could get a contract from something like 10 to 20 meetings, which was the usual. Now it's really harder to do that. So competition is tougher. We have less potential publishers interested in our games, and a lot more of games trying to get their foot in the market. This means that most games, however good they are, will fail. This is tough, but it's the truth. And it is especially true if your game is the first game you ever developed. So if this is your first game, I hate to say it like that, but if this is your first game, chances are it's gonna fail. We're gonna talk a little bit about that later, but I think it's important that we understand as indie developers, we have to be very resilient and we have to be very tolerant to failure, because this is something that will keep happening during some time for the next years, until the industry gets around this crisis we're living. So if you have a game and you want to be competitive, it's not all bad. You can try to make your statement and try to get your game published in the industry. So if you want to be competitive, you need to understand how to differentiate yourself from your competition. So right now we have in the incubation phase of GameJamPlus this year around 300 to 400 games. I don't have the exact number, but I know it's that's the ballpark around that. That's not a small amount of games that will be published that hopefully will be working towards publishing for next year. But we have to consider the fact that that every game is different, and all those games don't belong to the same genre, don't belong to the same niche. And so we have this internal competition within GameJamPlus, and when we go out to the industry, we'll have to face the actual competition against the rest of the world. So we need to know how to make our game stand up among our competitors, and how to be actually remembered and maybe picked up by a publisher in the future. The first strategy and the best strategy to get this, to differentiate yourself, is to have a very good track record. Track record means that you have a lot of verifiable experience. If you already published several games in the past and you can verify that, and you can say, yeah, I'm the guy who published this, and that, then you're already at an advantage. You already have an advantage against your competitors. But I understand for how GameJamPlus works, that for most of you, this will be your first game. So this is maybe not an option for most of you. And since we cannot depend only on one strategy, then we might work with the second strategy, that is having a really, really, really nice game. So it's a little bit like this idea. When you are meeting with a publisher and you say, okay, this is my first game, that publisher will probably ask you something like this. What would you say if a guy walking here to an interview and only has this one game? It has only developed this one game. So what you have to answer to that question is, well, this guy really probably has a really, really nice game. And that's what you want. You want to be the guy with a really nice game. Bear in mind that if you are in a B2B event and you're pitching to several publishers, each one of those publishers is already watching at several other pitches. So yours have to be very good. Your pitch has to be memorable. Your game has to be memorable. So how to do that? The first step, I would say, is that you have to focus on quality. First of all, you have to have a good game. There is no shortcut around this. As a game developer, you have to strive to have the best game possible, the best game you can make with the resources you have. This means most of the time that you probably should be doing a shorter game or a smaller game that you want. Yeah, this is a challenge we all face. Scope creep is a real problem in our industry. We want to make the games huge, bigger than life, and that's not going to work for everyone because we don't have infinite resources, we don't have infinite money. It is better to have a short game or a smaller game with a very, very good quality. Quality means that your game is well developed. It has very juicy mechanics, very oiled systems, that your games actually promises on what it actually delivers on what it promises, and that your production quality is very high for the small quantity of assets you have, that is very cohesive. In essence, that your game feels like a finished product, even if it's a smaller one. So that's the first advice I can give you all. Like, you really need to work on the quality of your game. You need to make sure that by the end of this process, you have a very good game, a very quality game. That should be your first priority here. If you have a very good game, if you are designing a game with conscience and you understand what makes your game good, then you are already doing the second step, that is knowing your game. Knowing your game, well, the whole idea is that this is your game, the one you're pitching to your publishers, the one you are trying to get published is your game. You need to understand what is it that makes your game special. And if your game is not special, then why would someone buy it, right? So this is the point where I repeat that I am assuming all of you want to publish and sell your game. For you to actually be able to sell your game, you need to have a game that is special, that is unique in some shape or form. A technical challenge of replicating, of cloning another game, it's good for as an exercise. As a game developer, it's good to do these type of things, but it's not a publishing something I can publish. A clone is not a game that I can publish, that I can actually sell. So for this particular point, it is the focus of this lecture. We are going to use to explore this tool. My proposition is to give you this tool, the tool of key features, as a marketing tool to understand your game and to be able to communicate it effectively to publishers, to clients, to everyone who you need to listen to get behind your game. Okay. I'm going to make a little pause here to see if we have any questions. If you have any doubts you want to clarify or any comments you want to make, please do them now so we can continue. Everything good? Okay. All right. So, what are key features? When we say the key features of a game, we're talking about 4 or 5 descriptors, phrases usually, that are very, very, very specific, and they have this descriptive quality about the game. The whole idea is that you can describe your entire game with only these few phrases. That's the whole idea. So if you can do that, then you can demonstrate that you understand your game, and you can present that game to other people and actually have a good footing on where what is that it makes your game special and unique. And from that, you can start working on why your game is better than your competition, or why not. We can talk about that later. I'll give you a couple of tools at the end for that. I'll mention a couple of tools at the end. But the first step is to understand very well your game, to know how your game works and how to communicate it effectively. And the key features is a very good marketing tool for this. It is very important that key features are very, very, very specific, and that key features have a descriptive quality instead of a qualifying phrasing. So I'll give you a couple of examples here. But key feature, like if you are trying to describe your game and you say your game has beautiful art, that is saying nothing to anyone. No one is going to say that their game has ugly art, unless that's a key feature of their game. But most people will say, yeah, my game has beautiful art. Of course it has beautiful art because I like the art of my game. So the art of my game is beautiful. This is basically useless from a marketing standpoint. You have to be more specific as possible. So in the right, you have a couple of examples. It's different to say my game has hand-drawn art, for instance, or it has a painterly style, or it has a low poly aesthetics, or it has a high definition, hyper realistic graphics. When you are describing the art of your game, try to make it in a way that people can actually see the game on their heads, instead of just saying, yeah, the game is beautiful. Beautiful can mean whatever for every person, and it's not a good descriptor. Hand-drawn, it gives me more information about how the game would look. Painterly gives me more information about how the game would look. We can do the same with music, for instance. Every game wants to have amazing music. I think this is the same as beautiful art. Of course, my games have amazing music because I like the music my games have. This is completely useless from a marketing standpoint. Instead of this, I can be more descriptive. I can say my game has high energy heavy metal. Like, for instance, if we're talking about Metal Desinger or Doom, like talking about the heavy metal the game has is a lot more descriptive. And it's the same idea. Like when you describe your game, people might be able to hear your game in their heads. Like, okay, I have an idea of how the game will sound, how the music will sound, and I can decide if I like that or not. I, as a publisher, I, as a consumer, as a gamer, I can say, okay, I like heavy metal. Maybe I will like this game. And we can work with these nostalgic 80s electronic, retro 8-bit, ambience and instrumental, medieval music instrumentation, like whatever descriptors you can use to actually provide detail on how the music of your game will sound, will feel. That is a good key feature. That is a good way of describing your key features. And the same with gameplay. The basic lesson here is try to be as specific as possible. So whenever you describe your game using your key features, everyone who is hearing you understands what your game is and how, and can imagine their game in their heads. Engaging gameplay, very generic. Every game should strive to have engaging gameplay. This doesn't help at all. But it's different if I start talking about my game has fast-paced combat, or immersive exploration, or strategic combat, which is very different to fast-paced, for instance, open-ended puzzles, strong decision-making mechanics, things like that, that will help someone like picture their game in their heads. We need to try to be as specific as possible. That's the main lesson here. So I have a few examples here from actual games. Planet Cube Edge is a game from Costa Rica. Very successful game, which has the feeling of Mega Man with a very retro art. So a key feature of Planet Cube Edge would be retro pixel art that evokes the 8-bit era. This is something that if I don't show you the game and I tell you this is a game with retro pixel art that evokes the 8-bit era, you can make an idea in your head of how that game will work. You will start picturing games of the Game Boy, for instance, or the early stages of the Nintendo system. And okay, have an idea how the game will look. And once you see this, it's like, okay, yeah, this more or less matches with the idea I had in my head. Deep and dramatic story through interactive comic books. This is a feature of this video game suit, also from Costa Rica. So when you say this to a person, and you are telling them that this game has a lot of text, it has a lot of narrative, and the way that narrative is presented is through interactive comic books. Whatever interactive comic books means, that person will start imagining their heads like, okay, maybe I can like move things around, or the comic books will have some interactive elements within it, or something like that. It's enough to plant that idea of how the game will behave and what makes this game different from other games that have deep and dramatic stories or whatever. I think this is the one last one from Costa Rica, the irreverent humor about struggles of life in My Name is Mayo. So My Name is Mayo is a game with a very particular humor, and is the most important feature this game has. It has many other key features, and we will discuss. I will have a few examples of different key features in games. How to describe a complete game using only key features. But in this case, the humor of the game is one of these most important features, is something that is important to highlight. So one of its key features will be the irreverent humor of the game about the struggles of life. The whole series of Mayo 1, 2, and 3, goes through different stages of life, with the first one focusing on becoming of age. And this is something like that someone could actually buy a game only because they want to see what's about the humor of the game and the way it interacts with this particular topic. So I want to do a little exercise with you guys. If you can help me write in the chat, I'm going to show you 2 examples of games entirely described only by their key features. And the whole idea is that you try to guess what is the game I'm talking about. So the first example is this one. If you can write in the chat, what is this game? What do you think this game is? Any guesses? Julia, if you're around, maybe you can try to help me here and guess which is this game. Still waiting. Hades. Yeah. Yeah. This is Hades. So once you've read all of them, it's like, okay, fast-paced, real-time combat, multiple weapons for different play styles and whatnot. This is a very like this is a very important telltale sign. Okay, it's a game about Greek mythology. There are several games about Greek mythology. If you think about, for instance, Stray Gods, okay, Stray Gods is a game about Greek mythology but doesn't have combat, so it's not that one. Maybe it is God of War, but then you have voice acting for the complete game. Okay, this could also be God of War, but then you go to this one, original rock soundtrack. It's like, okay, all right, God of War doesn't have rock music. This is something very specific of Hades. Hades is not the only game with rock music, of course, and it's not the only game about Greek mythology, and it's not the only game about fast-paced real-time combat. None of these elements are unique of Hades, but the combination of all of them make this game special and unique in some way. So this is why I like this tool. This tool allows us to actually see an abstraction of the game, the game from a very descriptive standpoint, and you can actually sell the idea of how this game will feel, how this game will look. Okay, one more. If you're watching the video, not live, but in YouTube, and leave your thoughts in the comments. It's good engagement. I won't be able to answer you, but yeah, Blasphemous. See, this is the point. The whole idea is that it should be this obvious. It should be this clear. And see that in both cases, I limit myself to only 5 key features. This actually should be the maximum key features you should use to describe your game. More than this, and then it becomes like a huge text. So 5 is the sweet spot, and you should be able to describe your game with these 5 concepts, 5 phrases that actually identify your game from anything else. And it's the same. Blasphemous is not the only game with punishing combat. Actually, the punishing combat side of Blasphemous is something that is inherited from the Souls genre. Like, Blasphemous is inheriting a lot from Dark Souls. The same with the many boss fights. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Well, Blasphemous is actually a Metroidvania with a lot of influence from Castlevania. So yeah, that actually checks out. Like, if you read this and you say, okay, punishing combat system, many boss fights, huge map, detailed pixel art, that sounds like Castlevania. And then you land into this one, the captivating plot about religion, faith, and the path of a mysterious protagonist, and that doesn't really fit with Castlevania. Like, Castlevania is not really about religion and faith. It has themes about vampires and the path of Alucard and whatnot. And Alucard is not that mysterious a protagonist either. Like, we more or less know Alucard by this point. So this is the one that, okay, these 4 will say this is Castlevania, but then you land in this one. Okay, this is probably this doesn't match very well with Castlevania. Which other game we can use? And the answer is Blasphemous. We can do the same if we take only these 3. We can say this game is Dark Souls or Elden Ring. But when you land on high detail pixel art, it's like, okay, Elden Ring is not pixel art, Dark Souls is not pixel art, then you can only land on Blasphemous. So the whole idea is that the combination of these elements is what makes your game unique, is what makes a game like Blasphemous unique. Is the combination of elements. That's why I'm saying at the beginning of the presentation that the key features are like the DNA of your game. These elements combined is what make the game stand out into the industry. If we go back to Hades, for instance, and you think about, okay, Hades is a top-down hack and slash with very detailed 3D art, very stylized 3D art. We could be talking about Death's Door as well. So Hades is very similar to Death's Door, very similar games that were launched almost at the same date. And if you've played Hades and you liked it, you probably like Death's Door. So you have to think how I differentiate this game from that game. And I cannot say like only one point or only one feature. I have to have this combination of elements that actually make this game particularly and unique. Any questions you guys have at this point? Okay. So to close this presentation, I'm going to review very quickly two more tools that you probably should know. The first one is the concept of benchmarking. Benchmarking is also a marketing tool. You will also hear it as competitor analysis. It's one form of competitor analysis. Benchmarking, it's the practice of looking for games that are similar, that are very, very similar to yours, that are coming out more or less at the same time. So you want to find games that have been recently launched, no more than 2 years back, or they're about to launch no more than 2 years on front of yours. Especially games that are more or less about to launch at the same time as yours. Those are the most important ones you need to find out. For these, you can use a lot of tools. You can use something like SteamDB, something like 50 Games Like, or for games that haven't been published yet, you have to keep reading about new indie releases and if possible, be around Reddit and Facebook groups and try to be in touch with the community, with the indie dev community, and try to find people that are working on games similar to yours. Follow their process, understand their game. And benchmarking is all about understanding with what you are competing. Gamalytic, sure, I don't know that one, but I can check in a moment. Yeah, it's a database of this it has a price copy sold. This is very good. This is an amazing tool. Yeah, thanks for that suggestion. That looks like a very, very good tool. So the whole idea with benchmarking is that you want games that are in the same genre, more or less with the same themes, and with the same production quality as yours. In every genre, in every niche, you will find market leaders that are games that are like the top tier of that genre. You can only use that in your benchmark if you think that your game will be as good, as well produced as those market leaders. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You need to understand the production quality of your game, and which implies the price of your game, the size of your game, and the amount of content your game has. and look for games that are similar to that. Understanding that the quality of your game has to be the best possible for the resources you have. Then you have a game that is Metroidvania, okay, then you can go and look for Metroidvanias that are releasing recently. But if your game has pixel art, then you can focus only on Metroidvanias that have pixel art style. If your Metroidvania is side-scrolling, then you can focus only on those who are actually side-scrolling games. And if your game is on the shorter side, then you can focus on those Metroidvanias who are on the shorter side with a lower price point, and use those to compare your game with and to see if your game is actually able to compete against those. That's what you want to look for. Like, okay, the games that are in my niche, that are my actual immediate competitors, can I compete with those? So this is the first tool I want to talk to you about. We can have a long discussion about benchmarking, maybe another point. But it is important that you are doing your competitor analysis right now, like hopefully right after the jam finished. If you haven't started doing this, you should do this like now. This is very important that you have it ready as soon as possible. The other tool I can give you, this is a little hack. It's called the rule of negatives. I saw this in a lecture by Chris Zukowski, which is one of the best game marketers right now. It has an amazing track record on assessing and consulting on game marketing. And the rule of negatives, how it works is that once you have your competitors identified, look for properties that none of your competitors have. You can also focus on the leader of your genre, of your niche, and what the leader of your niche is doing and what is not, and find one negative property you can integrate to your game that competitor doesn't have. So, for instance, in the case of Suit, which is one of the games that I showed you earlier from Costa Rica, we actually did this exercise and we found out that most of our competitors in the simulation strategy genre, which is the niche of Suit, don't really have a story. Like that is something that strategy simulation games usually don't do. They usually don't have a story. So we actually focus a lot on giving Suit a very, very dramatic, very soap opera style story. And that is the rule of negatives for us. Like, okay, our game is a simulation analysis, simulation and strategy game, very similar to Surviving Mars, very similar to Frostpunk, very similar to Before We Leave. But our game has this very, very dramatic, this soap opera style story with a lot of inspiration on Star Trek, with a lot of inspiration of other sources that we have. And that is something that we know our competitors or the leaders of our niche don't have. You can use this to shape a little bit the design of your game now that you are at an early stage and you have time to actually change a little bit of how your game works. Then you can understand, okay, if my competitors and the leaders of my niche are doing this, and that, maybe I can flip some of these properties and use that as an anchor point to tell people like, okay, my game is as good as these games, and also my game does this particular thing different from the others. That is the rule of negatives. And there are a lot more. Marketing is, as I said, a very, very complex task. It requires a lot of tools and a lot of insight from the developer. So you can have a lot of marketing tools in your belt. But right now I want to finish with this, the key features, the competitor analysis, and the rule of negatives, which I think work very well in tandem. So you have like a first step, some footing to start working on the marketing strategy for your game. And these are our networks. Sebasoft is my development studio, and CDEV is the company, the community from which we organize the game jams. If you have any more questions, you can reach to us through to Sebasoft or CDEV. And of course, I am one organizer for GameJamPlus as well, so you can actually reach to me through your organizers. You can ask around if I will be willing to talk a little more if you have any questions. So, Julia, are you there? Awesome. Thank you. Thanks to you guys for your time. I hope this is useful, and yeah, I'll be around to keep working with my community, and of course with all of you if you have if you need anything. Remember, we are all trying to do the same thing here, and we can actually help each other a lot. So I think we can finish here the presentation, unless someone has a particular question. Bye. Awesome. A nice day.